today at 3 o'clock. So check out Gallery Bookshop website for the link.
I just started the recording too. So if anybody gets a message, do you get a message on your screen about recording started?
Usually it announces itself, but
I thought, but anyway.
And you can see a little red dot sort of blink up in the upper left corner.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But usually we get a message on the screen you have to acknowledge, is what my experience was. So anyway, excuse me, Catherine, go ahead.
No problem. Let's see. So again, if you're just logging on, if you could please mute yourself, and then when it's your turn to read, you can unmute. Our next meeting is Sunday, November 15th at 3 o'clock, and our very own Sharon Bowers is going to be talking to us about adding humor to your writing. So be sure and check out our meeting next month, November. Today, of course, we're doing the EKPHRASIS readings, and you'll be looking at the artwork. So, and you can also check this out at the Artist Co-op, their website. So Artist Co-op in Mendocino, and go to their website, and it says exhibitions, and then you click on that, and then it'll show you the virtual exhibition for EKPHRASIS.
And on you'll get to see on the Writers Club website, there's a link there, and it goes directly to that page.
Fantastic. Yeah. And if you, as you click through, and the Artist Co-op, they did such a remarkable job on this, but on the very last page of their exhibition is a place for comments. So you're welcome to leave a comment about the artwork you saw, the readings. If you're a writer, your experience about responding or for writing, or how someone did a piece. So be sure and leave a comment for them. And then again, I want to go back and thank Karin Reynolds. So she did, again, this spectacular job on the website of, you know, all of a sudden, this was always an event we did in person, and they just pulled it off in such a spectacular way for the virtual EKPHRASIS display. And thank you also for the artists. So we've got a lot of artists joining us today. And thank you for the writers for all you did, because of course we couldn't do this without you either. So this is one of our favorite events. And just a little bit about the EKPHRASIS collaboration. I think this is our 8th year, is it, Karin?
I think it's,
she's muted, but
I think it's 9.
Ninth year. Okay, our 9th year.
Yes.
So, so EKPHRASIS, a friend of ours came up with the word. So she gets those word a day calendars, and EKPHRASIS means art responding to art, which is what we're doing. So we've got 10 artists that respond to writers. A piece a writer submitted, and then we have 10 writers who responded to 10 pieces of art that was submitted. So, and we've grown. I think when we first started off, we might have been, I don't know if it was 10, it might have been as many as 16, but we've grown each year. So now it's up to 20 pairs. So let's see, I'm going to then turn this over now to our MC today, and that is Donald Shepard. So he'll be introducing the pieces and the writers and the artists and their pieces. And we're going to be going in the order of how it is on the Artist Co-op website. So if you've been there. And so I'm going to mute myself and enjoy. Did you have something, Doug?
Well, yes. For everybody, we'll be able to see the speaker if you go up to the right-hand corner of your screen, and there's the word view with 9 little tiny boxes. And in there, if you choose speaker view, like I just did for myself, and now of course I see Catherine for whatever reason, but maybe it's the cat. in any case, so if you all do that, or you can keep it in gallery if you want to, but you'll have to figure out whose mouth is moving, and it'll be very tiny. So I'm going to start sharing the screen, which will bring us to the, okay, this opening. So is everybody happy with what's happening on your screen as far as the speaker view? Or anyway, so we don't need to, okay. Slow down, Doug. I'm gonna stop the share. I'm gonna bring it back so that Donald can take his mute off and start talking.
My mute is off.
Okay. So you've got the floor, Donald.
I don't have a screen with slides on it, Doug.
No, I took it away because I wanted your mouth to move first, but you want me to?
Mouth is moving.
Okay, well, let's see. Here we go.
And I have a screen that says Doug has started screen sharing.
Resume, I have to resume. I just resumed. It's not happy. Bring your shared window to the front. Ah, yeah, you get it. What? Oh, this one. No. Well, sorry, folks. We'll do a new share and bring in, click to exit full screen. I don't want to do that. Wow, we tried this. So stop the share, put it back to share screen, get into the window I want. So what am I doing wrong? God bless it. Let's see if that's the.
Do you have the images on a separate show?
Yes.
So you need to put that on your screen before you go to share screen.
Well, that's one way to do it, but let's see. If I do it that way and I go to my screen, let's see.
There's this thing called side by side. Is that something that?
Well, I wish that would work, but I haven't figured that out.
Okay.
So what's happening?
The side by side still seems to just give one long image of all the different speakers, like it would be a film roll. So it's not everybody.
No, I understand that, and I've used it, and Sharon, who is on, has done this, and we talked about it, but now, okay, this is just ridiculous.
I've come across this before, where if you're sharing and then you pop out and you pop back in, it doesn't work, and the only way I've gotten around it is to actually log out and log back in again.
Out of my Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, is that going to work for the host?
I have a solution.
Okay, we're listening.
So if you do a split screen, there's you or whoever the speaker is on one side, and then you bring open that page, set one, and you narrow it so that they both occupy the screen at the same time. Everything's there.
This is a Mac feature now you're talking about.
No. You just you're opening two windows. You've got the zoom. You narrow the zoom to half your screen. Then you open up the art cooperative page that has all the sets on it.
Well, no, we're not doing that. I've got a slide presentation going that we just looked at a little while ago, and now it's not coming up. Okay, I'm going to go back and open that. Is everybody seeing my screen? Is that what's happening?
Yep, we're seeing you.
Oh, great.
So Doug.
Yes, I'm listening.
While you're doing that,
yes,
I'm going to start things off.
Do.
And we'll catch up with you later.
Oh, wait a minute. Do we have it now?
I don't know. The first of all, I want one of these mute everyone buttons for when I Zoom my kids on Thanksgiving. And that'll help that out.
So question, does everybody see what my shared screen is now?
No.
No.
Okay, so I go back to Zoom and I share the screen right there. And
there we go.
There we go. Now, yes.
We got it. So the first speaker is Susan Fisher. She'll be reading Sepula Columbiana in response to Sarah Wagner's artwork, Tube Worm. Susan saw, quote, the glorious form and color of the tube worm through a child's eyes. A childlike curiosity about the world is a fine place to start reading. Susan, you're up.
Okay. Now I'm going to try what Nadi was saying, but I don't.
Stop talking. Okay. Do what you like, but stop talking. Susan, you're up.
Got it.
You want me to? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sepula Columbiana. Felix and I met in the Monterey Bay Aquarium, standing by an exhibit of a glorious vermilion-colored species. I was squinting at an information plaque next to the viewing window, my nose almost on the glass. Do you want me to read it to you? Asked someone standing behind me. I turned to see who it was, and there stood a slightly built, dark-haired boy, about 10 years old. Yes, thank you. I only have my prescription sunglasses with me. It's dim in here, isn't it? Yep, all the light is focused on the displays. It says Sepula Columbiana. It's such a glorious sea plant. Actually, it's a tube worm. They are common along the West Coast. A worm? I never knew worms could be pretty. Where is the wormy part? It moves in and out of the tube. Ha! Do you know a lot about sea life? Oh yes, I read about it all the time, and I come here a lot. So you are an expert. I'm going to be a marine biologist so I can protect ocean life. How lucky you are to have a goal when you are still so young. I am pretty old and I still don't have one. At this point, I began to wonder where his family was. I saw no one else in the room except for the two of us, probably because it was a dank and overcast February with few tourists in town. It's nice of your parents to bring you here so often. I don't have parents. I live with my brother. He works here. Felix told me more about Sepula Columbiana. It lives on plankton. It attaches firmly to a substrate. It has eyes and a mouth on the peristomium, a segment at its interior. It also has up to 190 abdominal segments, and the funnel-shaped protective operculum is used to open and close the tube as the worm moves in and out. I was very impressed. He told me he knew about every species in that big room, and then he gave me a full and detailed tour. Can I meet your brother? Is that possible? We went down a long hallway to a door labeled supply office. His brother Manny, who I guess was in his early 20s, sat at a desk talking on a phone. He waved us over to two well-worn side chairs and motioned that he'd be just a minute. When he hung up the receiver, he said hello to Felix, and then he asked me how he could be of help. I wanted to meet the brother of such a wonderful young man. Felix gave me a guided tour of the displays. He's so exceptional, and from what he says, you have a lot to do with that. Manny looked down and smiled before facing me. He is amazing, isn't he? I'm very proud of him. He deserves any praise. I mainly just feed him, shelter him, and love him. He manages his own studies, and his desire to learn is huge. We talked for a while, and all I could think of was that these brothers were exactly the sort of sons anyone would wish for. Responsible, thoughtful, and intelligent, and kind even to a random stranger. All over the globe, there are young people working hard to build a saner world, a better future. I treasure meeting them. Thank you, Serpula Colombiana, for today's lovely opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Doug is going to read Molly B's piece, Tortoising, in response to Pat Scott's artwork, On the Road Again. Pat Scott said, there cannot be a better example of the meaning of ekphrasis than Molly B's response. And I wholeheartedly agree. Doug.
Okay, Tortoising is the title. Serpentining through swaths of shrubs, cactus, and ferns, lugging the dome of her home, hexagonal reptiled rooftop, vertebral raftered ceilings, flat plastron floorboards, her body a temple. Her back a map of where she's walked, marble scars, fissures, brachiations like rivers coursing. She knows waterways from trickles to torrents. Scaling concentric ridges of mountains, shuddering quakes of plates, she stamps deliberately, delicately, determinedly. The topographical, cartographical, indomitable tortoise, toddling, trembling, tortoising along. Trundling, rumbling, lumbering along across landscapes ravaged by goats, now to where guavas grow in abundance. Goats and guavas, imports both. A tortoise is slow to hunger, can go a year without a drink of water, but here she swallows, but here she wallows in the wet, thick shell slick with moisture, and dips her beak to celebrate the mud from the morning's rain on a warm, sunny day. Tortoise remembers a time of wide grasslands before fences and roads, when friends gathered to creep along ancestral pathways, following the swing of precipitation like a pendulum, migrating with the seasons. She pauses on a lava rock outcropping and turns her stony gaze to the ocean, buffeted by salty breezes. Closing her eyes, she dreams for 16 hours a day for 100 years.
Doug, show us the artwork.
Yeah, the artwork, doggone it. Sorry. Well, and the thing is, sorry, Pat, because because there are 3 images here. And it's quite a piece. Thank you, Jenny.
What is it carved from?
Well, Pat can unmute herself and answer the question.
She's probably still muted.
What was the question?
Well, what's it made of?
It's serpentine from Highway 128. It's a rock along those green outcroppings, very ancient stone from the depths of the ocean. And how Molly caught, they don't get the title or what stone it is, or when the writer responds to the artwork, they have no information except the image. And how she looked at this piece with such understanding and depth just floored me. I just think it's the most wonderful description of what's going on in that stone. And using the word serpentining in the beginning, and she said, I wrote her and thanked her, and she said she guessed it was serpentine, and so she knows her rocks anyway. And it's like she knew it was on 128 for that matter. Anyway, I just was delighted.
Good.
And honored to have her writing, and sorry she couldn't be here to read it. I got an email saying she couldn't be here today. Thank you anyway.
Yes.
Next is Les Sissick. You'll be reading Driven in response to Bob Rhodes' artwork, Good Sports. Les tells us about ending up on the cutting room floor, a story many of us share. Les.
All right, thank you. This is autobiographical. Growing up in the 30s and 40s was effortless for me, primarily because I never gave anything a thought. My father sought to give me direction. He handed me a poster of all American hobbies and said, pick one. I considered the option and chose cars and driving. Little training was required and driving could be done anywhere. Mountain climbing looked dangerous. Horses were scary. Golf was for old guys and hunting involved killing. Well, Dad taught me how to drive. One Sunday, he asked me to back the Ford Woody out of the garage. I did, but instead of hitting the brake, I hit the gas and we crashed into a sassafras tree, splitting the wooden tailgate. I remember hearing my father curse as we watched the two radio knobs fly past us into the back seat. I got my driver's license at 16, and for dates, my dad let me use his Ford sedan. Driving home late one night in our small town, I pulled out the choke, which set the speed at about 20 miles an hour, and I stretched my legs across the passenger seat. A relaxing drive home on empty roads. I got to our driveway and turned into the garage, but no, my feet were still on the seat. Without brakes, the impact against the back of the garage wall was huge and noisy. On the other side of the wall, in the dining room, things hit the floor and dishes broke in the sideboard. My final and most dramatic vehicular disaster occurred when I was a student at Bard College. I was driving my father's new Ford sedan. After drinking a lot of beer with my buddy Larry Hagman, we started up the narrow, winding road to campus. Larry noticed that the odometer had passed 1,000 miles. He said, the break-in period is over. You can go as fast as you want. Whooping, I floored it and we howled until I lost control. The car ran off the road, up a bank, and flipped over onto its top, blowing out all the windows. No seatbelts back then, but no injuries either. Being drunk saved us. We crawled out of the wreck and walked back to campus. There was a lot to deal with the next day, but no law enforcement was involved. Some years later, I joined my father's insurance company and went to Washington, D.C. A fellow insurance man took me to the Lavender Hill Mob, the local Sports Car Club of America affiliate. I joined and raced my Austin Healey. My interests grew, and I bought the first AC Bristol in the United States, a fabulous car. I became a high-scoring driver in my class, traveling around the country, hauling the AC on a trailer. Carroll Shelby was a top guy in the SCCA. After one race, he came over to my pit. What are you driving? He had never heard of this car. He shook his head in wonder. That thing goes around corners like it's on rails. He bought one, and conversations with Ford Motor, they built the AC Cobra, which became the Shelby Cobra. If you saw the film Ford versus Ferrari, you know the story of this car. Sadly, my part in all this never made it into the movie.
Thank you, Les. Sharon Kim Leos will be reading Remedy in response to Steve Garner's artwork, Conjuring Dragons. Sharon's piece illustrates why she is successful at organizing workshops. Sharon.
Thank you. She was not a Herbie chick, term she felt entitled to use, but only in her head. She did not wear floating cotton skirts sewn over with small mirrors or decorated with elephants marching around the hem. She did not own Birkenstocks. She tried to buy organic, as it was better for the planet, but only if it wasn't significantly more expensive. With eggs, she only went as far as cage-free. She did not believe in dream catchers or crystals or chakras or animus gods that were the stones, sea, or sky. So it was very odd when she began to believe that all her bad feelings could be thrown like a ball, like a big sack. It wasn't entirely her idea. Her therapist had seeded it. If your anxiety was a ball, her therapist had said, what kind of ball is it? She'd noted the discordant tenses. Were a ball, it would be a basketball. As big as that? She hadn't told her therapist the truth, that what had actually come to mind was one of those sit-on balls you use for Pilates or in place of a desk chair if you had a bad back, which she did. She straightened her posture slightly. Well, each time you think about it, I want you to imagine it small. And now that's about time. Was her therapist clock watching meant to exercise or exorcise her abandonment anxiety? She gathered up her wallet and keys. So she had imagined her anxieties as a ball, as a series of balls getting progressively smaller. And then it occurred to her that if her anxieties were a ball, she noted the awkward transition from plural to singular, she should be able to throw it. Isn't that what balls were for? It wasn't outlandish, it was sensible. Here she was, therefore, in her sensible tweed skirt and forest green jacket with multiple practical pockets, standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind whipping her hair. A small ball, she thought, and she imagined it between her hands. A dense ball, but not so dense that she wouldn't be able to loft it easily over the crumbling edge and feel the wind come whistling into the new space in her chest. Go, she thrust with all her might. It worked. Sea and salt, and from somewhere frying potatoes came whirling through her nostrils and deep into her newly disburdened chest. Relief. And then she breathed out. The end.
Thank you. There we go. I've lost my place on the page. You'll have to forgive me. Here we are. What? Oh, there it is. my prompters, parole officers and all that are telling me to read the screen. Actually, Catherine Brown is going to read for Sue Gibson. I remember Sue reading in class, and she always laughed through while she was reading. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank Catherine for all she does for local writers. Catherine.
Oh, thank you, Donald. And this is in response to Karin Reynolds' piece. So, house hunting. Harold and Henrietta House Sparrow sat on a fence sharing a tasty fat worm because they shared everything. Henrietta said, Harold, this is such a special time, and I need to tell you how proud I am of you. I think back when we first met and how you hopped up and down and fluffed your tail feathers. Your wings were spread wide open, and you ran off all my other suitors. You were such a man. I know I am vain, but I truly think I deserved all that attention. I have always prided myself on my pretty feathers. Harold finished his portion of the worm, cleaned his beak under his feathers, and said, Henrietta. We need to choose an Eve to build our new home. Have been looking around and think I found a few possibilities and want you to see them. I will make sure we won't settle by any ravens because I remember the time they tried to steal our babies and all of the gentlemen house sparrows banded together and chased them away. I will be looking at the neighbors as I want a tranquil nest for our little family. There will be no mockingbirds either because they make too much noise. I also want to make sure we have lots of twigs and straw close by. Proper mud, too. Bits of cotton are always helpful, and I found a nice supply. Neither of us want to be under any HOAs, so I'll be careful of that. Henrietta chirped and said, "Oh, Harold, this time of year makes me think of our first little nest. You were so clever when you found that old Christmas tree and brought back all that tinsel. I think that was one of our loveliest. I know the other lady house sparrows were jealous, and I heard one fuss at her husband about ours and say that he wasn't a good provider. Let's go see where we might live." After looking at several, she said, "Yes, yes, this one is perfect. I love the color of the eaves and think we will be happy here and raise our beautiful little house sparrows." She gave him a soft peck on his neck, and they started to gather lovely, soft things for their new home.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we have Priscilla Coleman, who will be reading The Story of a Farm in response to Sebaik's artwork, Waiting. Priscilla still writes a column for Mendocino Community Library in the local press, even though the library is closed for the duration. Another example of an infectious optimism. Priscilla.
There, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, and the column is online. If you go to Mendocino Beacon Community Library Notes. The Story of a Farm. Mama and Papa and their 5 children live on a 200-acre farm in Vermont. On Bear Swamp Road, it's halfway between Burlington and Montpelier. There are several apple trees, at least 9, and Mama bakes apple pies. She does the laundry, cleans the house, and works in the garden. She's exhausted at the end of the day. Georgie, the 16-year-old, sells slices of the pies at their farm stand on the main road. Neighbors buy them for $1 each, and folks from the city stop in their Mercedes-Benz on their way home. Papa tends to the sheep in the upper field, and Victoria, age 14, sells fruit and vegetables at the stand. She gets to keep part of the proceeds. There is a bright red bicycle at the store downtown she would love to have. The children are named for kings and queens because Mama and Papa are into the sagas of history. There is George, Victoria, Cleopatra, Frederick, and Julius. They are happy on the farm and go to a one-room schoolhouse. Papa takes them in his wagon. Their lives are like a fairy tale. It's a beautiful day with azure skies and white clouds fluffy as the sheep's wool. Birds zoom across the skies and frogs croak from the pond. Sunflowers bloom in bright yellows and daisies turn their faces to the sun. Everything is peaceful and idyllic here. The twins, Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, take care of their dog, a feisty bull named Nero. They frolic in the tall grass and let him nuzzle their ears and noses. They wish they could buy him a collar with his name on it and their phone number in case he gets lost. The barn needs fresh flooring and a new roof, but the farm stand doesn't make enough money to pay for those jobs. Papa can't work and care for his farmland and animals. He thinks of planting grapevines and making wine, but he knows those take years to mature before they produce any saleable vintages. Frederick stands by the road and watches the cars go by. He could use a new pair of trousers and new shoes, but he's happy with his family and friends and neighbors who come to visit. Bah, bah, say the sheep. How are you? Good, say the cows who donate buckets of milk and cream. In the barn are goats who contribute feta cheese daily. And then the Army Corps of Engineers comes to the farm to design a freeway. They make an offer to Papa that he cannot refuse. Now Nero will have his new shiny collar and Victoria her red bicycle. Freddie will have new shoes and pants, and Julius will be able to attend college. Cleopatra will go to business school and open her own fashion shop and direct many employees. Mama and Papa will have a vacation in Hawaii. The story of this farm must have a happy ending, and so it does.
Thank you, Priscilla.
And I want to thank Seb Ikes for that wonderful, cheerful painting. It just cheered me up every time I looked at it.
I think 2 years ago, I was matched with EKPHRASIS with Seb Ikes, and I mentioned, perhaps in her hearing, that artists put their work on a wall in a gallery, and they get $200, $300, $400 for it. And one of my poems fell out of my car, and I got $1,000 fine for it, which is the difference between artists and writers, I guess. Next, we have Doug Fortier, who will be reading Dopo la Peste in response to Sharon Gardner's artwork, Night Bridge in Venice. I'm thankful for all my good friend Doug does for local writers, and for all he does for this group. Doug?
Well, this is really sad because I have left out the slide that this is associated with, and I don't know if I could be more bummed. I could go through to see if I can find it within all of them, but could you please go to the website, to the Artist Co-op website, and see this? It's such a beautiful picture of Venice and the canal at night. And well, I'm an idiot, so all I can ever say here is, anyway, I'll just continue.
Beautiful, I saw that.
Yeah. Okay, geez. So, Dopo la Peste. To live, my wife Melina, her mother Antonietta, and I had to leave our home on Calle de Morti, Street of the Dead, in Venice because of the plague. There is an irony there. I took this photo in the middle of March around midnight after we'd finished packing. We went to our summer house in the mountains outside Lucana, 50 kilometers west of Turin, a 4-hour trip. Our 2 sons, Marco and Lodovico Vic, living at home, wanted to stay at their jobs with their friends and couldn't be convinced. They didn't understand our worry, but when you're in your 20s, you're fearless. Lucana has 2,000 residents in the territory of Gran Paradiso National Park, where we would usually get away from the heat from mid-July to mid-September. In March, walking every day, we saw many more marmots, chamois, and ibexes. It became our routine to rise with the sun for breakfast, then walk 6 kilometers among the trees. At first, we didn't see the virus as a personal death sentence, only an inconvenience requiring masks in public and sheltering in place. Then the numbers grew, and the media exposed the government's disregard in trading a good economy for the lives of its citizens. Mother Antonietta became our biggest concern. We did nothing to put her at risk. Within 3 months, the boys needed money for food, their jobs gone. We talked every week. Their spirits were good, even though they spent most of their time at home. The time away from home worried us. Then Vic talked about how Marco wasn't doing well. Within 3 weeks, both were gone, and we couldn't comfort them in their suffering. Our boys. Now, 3 years later, in the times immediately dopo la peste, after the plague, we're left with only what's most enduring, what's truly important, no longer arrogant. We've given rise to compassion for the suffering of others. And that's it. And my apologies to Sharon. Okay.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
Next up is Windflower, who will be reading I Am From the Ocean in response to Karin Fenley's artwork, Out There. I've been privileged to share poetry readings with Windflower and incidentally with Maureen, who's with us today, and I'm so glad to see her joining us.
And I want to echo that. I am so happy to see Maureen.
Yeah.
Too. Thank you, Donald. I've missed our gatherings.
Yes. Windflower is a powerful poet who links nature to our deeper thoughts. Windflower.
Thank you. I am from the ocean. I am from the ocean of my mother's womb, before I knew the taste of ocean brine, the feel of barnacles against my palm. I am from the ocean of my mother's womb, before I knew the call of seashells, the sensation of sand between my toes. I am from the ocean of my mother's womb, before I knew the color of sun seeping through water, the moist chiffon of fog grazing my face. I am from the ocean of my mother's womb, before I knew the scent of wind poppies, purple sand verbena reaching for my ankles. I am from the ocean of my mother's womb, that liminal space. Great and a wonderful painting I had to respond to.
Thank you, Windflower. Artist Laura Corbin's piece Splash inspired Holly Tannen's song Cabin Fever, which she'll perform at a later time. Holly could and did write a song about that. Karin Uphoff will be reading Big Red in response to Mary T. Anderson's artwork, Bird of Prey. I learned from Karin that turkey vultures are raptors, and I didn't know that before. Karin.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Find the poem. This came out as a limerick. Big Red. It lay below the power line, frayed feathers torn and rumpled, had flown great wings one last time before its soaring crumpled. Bent above its gasping breast, its one eye looking vacant, took off my shirt to make a nest and asked it to be patient. Wrapped in cotton, struggle ceased, carried it home with purpose, snuck in garage, dark tomb of peace, and waited for life to surface. Washed off grime and bits of blood, examined its raptor tail feathers. Its feeble fight caused my tears to flood. Could I heal this avian treasure? I gave it water and closed the door. Went in the house for dinner. Had dreams of flight in which I soared. A bright future began to glimmer. Cool dawn next morn, I hurried to find box bed with my ward was abandoned. High in rafters glared hawk unconfined. Over kingdom it fully commanded. Haggard feathers now dry and fluffed. Big bootio spent some time preening. It seemed double in size. Had I been roughed? With panicky thoughts I was teeming. How to release this magical fowl, sharp talons and hook-tip beak. Slipped on work gloves, wrapped in towels, and climbed the ladder to softly speak of its feathered beauty and dignity, how I meant to take it outside for its red-tail taste of sky's liberty. With a high "Creech," it replied. While it flapped, I ducked to clasp its feet. It politely refrained from pecking. Wings were strong, though one eye did weep. Health details I'd no way of checking. Shrouded in terry, I carried it out. Set it gently atop of old fence post. Adjusting to sun as it scanned about, wings lifted to sail from its host. Steady it climbed on each vault of air, circling earth ever higher. Then returned to follow me everywhere, giving flight to my deeper desires. I longed to aid this two-legged tribe, so joined a bird rehab center. Beginning anew, I swallowed my pride to shadow the young knowing mentors. Now I care for raptors each day who are injured by human obtrusion. And sometimes Big Red dips down to play, our spirits forever a fusion. And I write at the bottom that up to 64 million birds, mostly raptors, are killed each year by US power lines, with between 8 and 57 million birds killed by collision, and between 0.9 and 11.6 million birds killed by electrocution.
Thank you, Karin. Norma Watkins will be reading The Child and the Crow, which inspired Debra Lennox's artwork, Raven Angel.
Can I say something about the Big Red?
Yes.
I'm Mary Anderson, and I did the Birds of Prey, as in prayer flags. I'm so touched by that writing, I can't tell you. That's all I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
That's the magic of EKPHRASIS.
I agree. That was so powerful. Just so very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Next, we have Elizabeth Reynolds will be reading Backwards, which inspired Claire Fortier's artwork, Backwards. Elizabeth is a thought-provoking poet who knows what she is talking about when she says she wants to dwell in the end of songs. Elizabeth.
Thank you. Backwards. I've always been backwards. My 7s and 9s turned their back to the wall when I was small. I learned the alphabet from Z down. You know, Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, etc. Except that I always wrote CTE, t-t. I read books backwards, lovingly knowing who done it, and then thread my way back. The ends of the songs were where I wanted to dwell, not in the oompa oompa of beginnings. Now that I'm here, I should like to start living my life backwards. Next decade will be my 60s, and the one after that, 50s, until I disappear into the earth's womb. Short.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think I just mixed 11 and 12 up, Doug. Hope it didn't bother you.
Well, no, but we corrected, so we're good.
Next, I'm going to strangely morph into my neighbor, Natiosa, who will be reading 6 Feet Over and 6 Feet Under, which inspired Lynn Whiting.
Wow. I'm sorry. Are you going to do Norma Watkins next, which is really the one that's on your list?
Yeah, let's do that. I thought we had. You know, as I told someone recently, I only have one brain cell left, and they said, Donald, don't exaggerate. Norma Watkins will be reading The Child and the Crow, which inspired Debra Beck Lennox's artwork, Raven Angel.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on, I haven't finished. Norma is one of my fine local teachers who captures the darker side of our souls in this piece. Norma.
All right, The Child and the Crow. Images lingered. A long ride in a car with windows too high to see more than the tops of buildings. The car smelled old and the upholstery scratched the back of her legs. She did not know the man driving. She remembered his dusty coat, a hat pulled low, and a white star-shaped scar on his neck. She was to sit, not stand, and to stay silent. She sat in the back. Along the top of the front seat, a large black bird paced, peering at her, clacking its long beak. C for crow from her alphabet book. When she grew hungry, she remembered a cookie in her pocket. The crow took an interest and she gave it a piece. In a building, she climbed stairs behind the man, the bird now riding his shoulder. She whined at yet another flight, and he turned upon her such a terrible gaze, she went silent. When there were no more stairs, he pushed her into a large room and locked the door. Dust motes drifted in the light from high, dirty windows. There was little furniture. The sky turned dark. She peed in one corner and cried herself to sleep in another. She woke to rain and the sound of tapping. The crow sat on a window ledge. She pushed a table against the wall, then a chair, and climbed. The bird nudged a crust of bread under the barely opened frame. The roof leaked. A pot had been left to catch the water. The girl drank from this. The next day, the crow brought her half a roll, and on the third, the crust from a pie. On the fourth day, he did not come, nor the fifth. A woman in the building across the way noticed the bird and saw the small hand reaching for its offerings. She watched as the hand searched the empty ledge when the bird did not come. She called the police. No one knew the girl. No one in this country had reported her missing. And when her picture was shared with Interpol, no one came forward. She was adopted by a couple who named her Eloise and raised her with love. When she was grown and educated, they died. And Eloise, now 25 and quite beautiful, became a teacher in another country. At a party for new students, she heard a voice. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. She turned. The man was gray-haired and finely dressed. She circled him. Behind his right ear, above the collar, the white scar. She smiled and introduced herself. Did he have a child at the school? No, sadly, but he had been fortunate and was able to support the school financially. She watched his eyes move over her. Seduction would not be difficult. What had she been to him 20 years before? Someone in the way. Time enough to find out after they married and before she killed him. When he lay at her mercy, pleading for his life, she would tell him the story of the child and the crow.
A sinister story. Now, through the magic of Zoom, I'm going to morph into Natiosa, who will be reading 6 feet over or 6 feet under, which inspired Lynn Whiting's artwork, Struggle Ends When Gratitude Begins. Natty lives next door, which makes me a weary-handed neighbor, as she so eloquently put it.
Hi. I couldn't join the meeting at my house, so I came on over.
Okay, 6 feet over or 6 feet under. Lost in inner space, tangled in the frayed outer fringes of a cobwebbed brain. Lucid moments, treasured gems. Weary-handed neighbors wade through 6-foot isolation. Immunocompromised shopper, harvest market, 6 a.m. Stubbed my masked awareness on a wrong way arrow. Young aisle monitor points the way. Self-gratification, avid reader of Apocalypse, mere disaster, a distraction. I crave total annihilation, to simplify life, to return to the essence of things. Alone together again, Adam and Eve, confined, I sit pensive at the window. Slithering 6-foot snake hawks his wares. Luscious apples, bargain price. I take a bite. Thank you.
Welcome. And we morph back. Ginny Robbie will be reading On My Way West, which inspired Kathy Carl's artwork Field After Wyeth. Ginny is a prolific and successful writer. Touched me with her last phrase, hundreds of miles from its next of kin. Ginny.
The move west. On my way west, moving toward a new life in a strange but long-loved town, I became a gatherer. The RV was crowded with my stuff and my traveling companions' necessities. Hoppy, my parrot, in her cage. Rosie, a baby albino red rat snake in her cage. And Lovey, a tame white dove. On the floor of the RV shower were a few plants from home. A red mangrove seedling from the Everglades in a container of salty muck. The walking iris my best friend gave me, and the staghorn pup wired to a wooden plank. All her life, Lovey laid eggs, sitting on them for weeks before finally giving up. I'd throw them away and she'd lay a couple more. I suppose I admired her stick-to-itness. She spent the entire journey on a new clutch of eggs in a basket hanging off the shower head, swaying like a tree branch in a wind around every curve in the road. I started the move west in Miami, so was pretty far into it before I began adding to my collection. The first, a coal black kitten, came crying out of a clump of bushes on the bank of the Mississippi River in Nauvoo, Illinois. "It's a stray, take it if you want it," said the Mormon tour guide, walking by with her clutch of tourists as I cuddled the purring kitten. I remember the date, September 29th, 1991, 3 years to the day since my mother died. Her final cat had been black. "What does Nauvoo mean?" someone in the group asked the tour guide. "A beautiful place." I named the kitten Nauvoo and put him in the RV. Though it was early fall and I was headed north-northwest, here and there flowers still bloomed. I began collecting seeds of the ones I admired. I picked up acorns and pine cones. By the time I reached my new home in late October, I'd been on the road for 7 weeks and driven 9,000 miles. At the front of the house I'd bought was a triangle, small triangle, weed-choked, bit of ground bordered by a concrete walkway. I dug the hole in the center, put all the seeds in, wished them luck, and tamped down the soil. A South Dakota black oak sprouted in the spring, and though still young now, 29 years later, has roots here as deep as my own. I hope whoever comes after me appreciates its determination to survive, surrounded by a redwood forest, hundreds of miles from its next of kin.
Nice. Jenny. Next, Leslie Walkus will be reading Libation. So I have a prop. There it is.
So
Which inspired
I
Joseph
really liked that Joseph put a spiraled shell in his beautiful painting, because I was hoping that the sacred aspect of this ode that I wrote to libation would come through. And to me, that's what that symbolizes. as well as the other beautiful things in there. Ode to Libation. Clusters clipped from sacred vines, sugar dripping, sun shines. Cowering vats await the crush beneath priest souls' bouquet of must. Quaff the opus of Dionysus. Oh, the bubblies, clear and clean, fiascos of Chianti and regions between, Noors from floors of cool river valleys, a nectar to expose the boorish and reveal propensity to whorish. Oh, tequila, liquid contentment with worm, agave with larvae, blue succulent squirm, Saint Patron, a spirit on ice, served in procession with salt, a wrist, a slice. A sunrise tryst over fiery mezcal plains, the silvery realm margarita reigns. Comfort to Aztec souls aggrieved, mythical honey for lovers bereaved. Heady hops fill the air, oh, elixir soon to share. Porter, lager, amber ale, stout, dark as night, draught of pale. Ancient herbal protein shake, agronomic seed perhaps. Partake a pub crawl, Babylonian barbecue. The recipe's writ in cuneiform, it's Major League's beloved brew. Infuse the wort and collar the yeast, it's fit for man and also for beast.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we have Donald Shepard reading Slublock Two Skulls, which inspired Robert Yealand's artwork, Man of the Earth. This is the beginning of my second completed novel. Workers scanned along the railway line that followed the Shamet River Valley to the station, which reminded him of his tenant due to arrive on the late train from London. Post-war economies had reduced the schedule to one train a day, but locals still referred to it as the late train, and it often lived up to its misnomer. His parents had named their children Almus, Quercus, Holly, and Asa, so her name, Hazel Quillis, attracted him, perhaps another parental botanical quirk. He fretted again that she might not fit into Slublock Two Skulls and its eccentric characters, accustomed to isolation. Would her presence end the pristine rural character of the village? He had hired Minnie Go-to-Bed and friends to scrub Primrose Cottage upstairs and down, making sure his late wife's room remained locked at all times. An ash tree beckoned him to support his back while he ate a Stilton cheese sandwich and a pear and drank a bottle of tea. Lulled into a stupor by the heat of digestion, Quercus dozed. A good night's sleep had eluded him since the war, and he awoke in a sweat to pounding he took to be mortar shells until he realized the thunder came from Lady Anne's thoroughbred galloping up the escarpment. As his ancestors had for 500 years, Quercus blended with his surroundings and remained motionless while the local gentlewoman sped away. Sleep lured him again. The remembrance of his wife's death numbed his heart when he awoke. Billowing clouds scuttled across the sky, obscured the sun and threatened a shower. He glanced down the hill to the cottage in the garden he still tended for his beloved Violet. In the distance, under the eaves, he spotted the bedchamber window and recalled entering that room, grieving his darling's death. He relived his inability to save the one he loved and mourned the unreachable togetherness he'd hoped to share in the years ahead. Redirect, he told himself. I shall redirect my thoughts to more pleasant matters. Raindrops splattering the leaves and minute green ash flowers splashed pollen-laden water onto his cap. Grey weather echoed his deepening somber mood as he remembered Violet smiling from the kitchen door. Redirect, I shall take a long walk. He tugged his cap and rambled along a circular footpath called the Two Skulls Way until hours later, without ever crossing a macadamized road, he returned to the stile on the escarpment above the village. Rest on the top step, he surveyed the horizon and followed with respect the green-skirted rider who galloped down the hillside. The horse cleared the manicured hedges and the estate dry stone walls before slowing to a canter, a pace, then a walk up the beach-lined avenue to the manor. He walked down the lane past the garden, noted the high beech hedge needed trimming again, and left the living mausoleum for his present home. A shower overtook him, and he squeezed his back between elm and hedge for shelter. He recognized the slow plod of his friend's donkey and glimpsed a woman sitting on the cart as he trundled a few feet from him. She has arrived. The shower passed, and trudged home. Thank you, Donald. Erling Gleisner will be reading Forests and Families, which inspired Lynn Zickerman's Olson's artwork, Bridging Trees. Erling notes, we are all wearied by the proximity of loss. Erling.
Forests and Families. The trees stand tall, independent in their spiraling growth toward the sky, interlacing their branches to touch so tentatively in public, intertwining their roots so firmly into the earth. If one falls, all are weakened by the proximity of loss.
Mm.
Thank you.
Karin Lewis will be reading Intertidal Zone, which inspired Larry Wagner's artwork, High Tide, Nourished by Shell Song. There is a world of experience and emotion in Karin's line, Nourished by Shell Song. Karin.
Thank you so much for organizing this event. It's awesome to hear everybody's different interpretations. Thank you. It's a feast. Intertidal Zone. Here, poems are born from jagged edges of old angers, forgotten storms. We wade barefoot at low tide, splashed by salt water and the smoky scent of summer wildfires. Sand and kelp tumble old glass smooth. Whales migrate between hemispheres. I search for tangerine sea stars. I daydream about ancestors. They once gathered sacred feathers and painted sea caves, cleansed by high tide, nourished by shell song.
Thank you, Karin. Nona Smith will be reading Portrait of a Lady, which inspired Mary Ellen Campbell's artwork, Remembering. This piece was inspired by a black metal silhouette of a lady on a bench under a cypress tree in Manchester, which is no longer there, sadly. We always waved and said hello to her. I called her Isabel. Nona.
Portrait of a Lady. Some called her Cassandra. Others named her Isabel or Solange. Anyway, something other than the now trendy unisex names like Taylor and Tyler and Mason. This was a lady, a very feminine entity. You could tell by her billowy skirt that ended at her shapely ankles and the upsweep of hair at the nape of her neck, hair that disappeared into a wide-brimmed hat. She held a parasol with delicate fingers, elbows close to her erect body. Perched on a small wooden bench under a cypress tree in someone's front yard, she seemed to be waiting, Miss Havisham-like. Or at least that's how she appeared to me every time I drove through the tiny town of Manchester, perched itself on cliffs overlooking the ocean, a bump in the road, unable to boast even a single gas station. The cypress tree under which Cassandra, or Solange and Isabel, sat was oddly pruned into the shape of a single-tiered wedding cake. Each time I passed her on the ribbon of highway that edged the ocean, I waved and called out, not expecting her to wave back. It just pleased me to greet her. I began creating backstories for this mysterious lady in waiting. I imagined she might be like the French lieutenant's woman, waiting for her lover to return from the sea. Or maybe she sat on the small bench, gathering up courage to leave this tiny town and begin life afresh in some big city. Possibilities were endless until one foggy May morning. That day, I drove through Manchester and past the wedding cake tree, prepared to offer my usual greeting. But to my dismay, the space under the tree was empty. Cassandra and her bench were missing, vanished, disappeared. I made a quick U-turn to verify that she was indeed absent from her post. Parking my car in front of the now abandoned tree, I looked toward the house, a modern wooden structure with a wide perch. Flower pots crowded with red geraniums stood on each step leading to the front door. I thought about climbing those stairs, knocking on the door, and demanding to know what happened to Cassandra, or Isabel or Solange. Why wasn't she at her station? Had her beau finally returned and taken her away? Did she leave for the big city? Had she perhaps left a forwarding address? Instead, I sat in my car staring at the strangely shaped tree and the house beyond it. And after a while, I drove on in mourning. Weeks later, I learned from a real estate agent friend that the house had been sold. No, he didn't know any details about where the people went or what happened to the statue of the lovely woman who sat under the cypress tree. Time has passed, and I've managed to console myself somewhat with the fantasies of her life in a bigger environment than Manchester. Maybe she'll meet a new beau who won't keep her waiting, someone charming like Mr. Darcy. Perhaps she's gone somewhere else where she can let her hair down a bit, tuck her skirt under her knees like Pippi Longstockings, and do a few cartwheels. A place where she can meet a larger circle of friends who might call her Cassie, or Izzy, or Soul.
Good. Thank you, Nona.
You're welcome. Thank you for the beautiful, beautiful artwork that went with this. This is just lovely. I can't imagine anything better.
And lastly, we have Noti Bumpo, who will be reading Where Poets Meet at the Oddest Hours, which inspired Shanti Benoit's artwork, A Perfect Moment. Noti leads us to witness such heights of the mind, perhaps powered by love or perhaps by Guinness. Noti. Have we lost Noti?
Here, hold on.
Go
Hold
ahead.
on. Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay, hold on. I gotta get the poem back. Oh, here we are. We walked for some time by the river, stars just beginning to light. The insects were holding a concert and the birds slowly fading to sleep. I turned to you, or you turned to me, and said something deliciously deep. How I remember that moment, to be witness to such heights of the mind, and know in those brief minutes how the heart can contain such delights. One spoke, and the other one listened, then shifted our roles with sweet ease, watching the moon strut its light. If ever I get back to Erie, I'll return to that river again. Walk there in day or in deepening shadows, wishing your sudden return. And later, maybe stop for a pint, by that little white tavern we found, close by the fair river Erne.
Thank you, Nottie.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it back to Karin.
Okay, I just want to thank everyone. I think we should applaud all the artists and the writers. That was just so lovely. So I know everyone's muted, but and I thought it might be fun for just a few minutes to see if there's any questions for the artists or from the writers. So you'll need to unmute yourself if you've got a question.
I put a link up in the chat about the bookshop event that's this time next Sunday for Peace Maps, the book launch.
Okay.
And I'd love to say thank you so much to the gallery for putting this together once again. And Catherine and Doug for all your organization. It was so wonderful to hear all of your voices. It's been way too long.
Indeed.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I would just love to give all of you a virtual hug.
All right.
That sounds good.
Virtual. Great.
Nice to see everybody and wishing you so well. Keep writing.
Keep painting, keep writing.
Yeah.
Keep healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we'll see you for Sharon Bauer's workshop, November 15th. And again, check our website for the survey, or if you've got Doug's newsletter handy, please go find that for the link for the survey. Again, we really need some feedback.
One more thing.
Okay.
Please, everybody, vote.
Yes.
Done.
Vote.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll see you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Be happy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Priscilla, hi, Karen.
Yes, thank you once again.
Well, seems like something always goes wrong, but hey, what can I say? Guilty.
Hey, Karen, unmute.
Karen, yeah, if you want to say something.
We just learned for next time. In other words, and in the meantime, we maintain the spirit of a lively small town.
Yes, we do. We do. Thank you, Karen, for all your work. Seriously.
If everything was perfect, it would be too artificial.
Well, heaven forbid. Yeah.
Well done, Doug. You worked hard too.
Well, there's a lot, but I've decided there's a million ways to do it wrong and only a few to do it right. So.
Hey, that sounds like a poem. Go for it.
Yeah.
Or a song. That's the song.
Okay, I'm going to end this for everybody. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Doug.
You bet.